You are listening to the Mom to Mom podcast, hosted by Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How to Mom. This podcast is meant to empower women and bring the community together through storytelling and education. During these episodes, you will hear stories of triumph, heartache, and hope. You will hear time-tested tips and tricks shared by mamas and women. You will hear a variety of birth stories that will resonate with all birthing families, advice from professionals who have dedicated their teachings to pregnancy, birth, and moms. Here, you will find encouragement, support, and community, because we are your community, and we are so happy to have you. Now, on to today's episode. Hello, Mom to Mom listeners. I am so glad you are listening to today's episode. We are interviewing a professional that we have here in the Twin Cities on such an important topic. And so please continue to listen, because I really think you're going to walk away from this episode with some great knowledge, and also knowing that this incredible resource is at your fingertips, and also with some tips to bring along on your motherhood journey today and in the future. So I am so thankful to our guest, Kendra Olson, who I'm going to introduce right now, and then we are going to dive right in. Kendra is an owner and psychotherapist at Psychotherapy for Maternal Well-Being, which operates here in the Twin Cities. As a therapist for the last 17 years and specializing in maternal mental health, she has found that moms do best with specialized care. Kendra works with moms-to-be and moms who are struggling with getting pregnant, pregnancy, or motherhood. Her hope is that every mom that works with her improves her confidence and coping tools to navigate the rich and challenging road of motherhood. When Kendra is not working, she enjoys being a mom to 2 daughters, spending time outdoors with her family, and cooking and baking. What an important intro to not only give all of our listeners a good feel for who you are as a professional, but your day-to-day life as a mom and everything that you experience that is probably very similar to all of us. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
Thanks so much for being here. And we will mention this again at the end, but we are going to have all links to connect with Kendra in our show notes, not only her website, but her social platforms. Kendra puts a lot of really important educational content out into the world that we all need to see on a day-to-day basis. So I know that you're going to want to follow her, especially after chatting with us today. So welcome, Kendra, and thanks for not only the work that you do, but being willing to jump on today to let our listeners know that this specialized care is available to them. And it also comes from trained professionals who have passion and a lot of care behind the work that they do. And I know that just from the times that we have met and chatted about motherhood.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the nice intro.
Yes, absolutely. So we could talk about a lot of different topics, and I'm sure we will have Kendra back in the future. But today we decided that a really important topic that we could touch on are the common myths of motherhood. We know that they are out there. And I think why Kendra is the top expert and person that we want to go to is because day in and day out, she is meeting with moms and she is hearing these myths over and over and over again. And so she knows and has shared with me that this is important information that needs to get out there. And so, Kendra, if you want to just give everybody a hello, kind of an intro to the work that you do, what led you to this work, and then I will mention kind of the myths that we're going to touch on today.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Kendra Olson, and I am a therapist here in the Twin Cities, mental health. I have a practice that specializes in perinatal mental health. So that just includes, at least for me, kind of anywhere from trying to conceive all the way through really any stage of motherhood, though I tend to see a lot of moms that have younger kids,
Yeah.
and are still in kind of that adjustment, right, and transition to motherhood and parenthood. Yeah, and this is just, this is work I've done probably for the last 6 years or so. Was in a different setting before I opened my practice. But I just knew I wanted to kind of hone in a little bit more on working primarily with moms.
Mhm.
Um, yes, passion around it, and of course, not surprising, and I think is true for a lot of therapists that do perinatal work, is being a mom myself.
Mhm.
So that definitely was probably my launch into starting to see more um, clients during their, either infertility, during pregnancy, postpartum. Yeah, and then my own experience, right, with becoming a mom and realizing how hard it is at times, or just how much can influence, right, and impact how you have the experience of motherhood.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, right, I think also experiencing sometimes the lack of support, lack of acknowledgement, validation about the hard parts, and to some of the systemic reasons, motherhood can feel really hard. That has nothing to do with us, but kind of the world and society that we operate in. So
Absolutely. Well, and I
yeah,
was just going to say that probably not only becoming a mom, but I think like a lot of us, when we have entered this new phase of life, is kind of that gut check of like, where is that support? How needed it is, how unfamiliar it is to so many, how it's not talked about enough. And just
mm,
having that passion of being a resource, knowing that it's so needed.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. It's often, and part of the reason I think, I know I'm not alone in this, right? But like this kind of specialized care, right,
Mhm.
for, um, in my practice, primarily, people who identify as women, right, that are, um, some of the myths that include, right, like doing it on your own, and,
Yeah.
not utilizing your village, or
Mhm.
they just lead to loneliness and isolation.
Yeah.
And in this experience, sometimes the last years for some people, which is really unfortunate and sad.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everybody deserves better than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and then we add in the pandemic and, like,
Yes.
just
Right.
all of the other factors. But I think what I want our listeners to know as well is it's something different and brings things to another level when you have a professional, somebody who is trained to not only be a safe place and a safe environment for moms to be able to express whatever it is that they're going through or thinking or experiencing, but then having that professional who's able to give you the resources to utilize to, like you said, switch into this confidence
Yeah.
phase
Mhm.
versus feeling like, yes, we can all call a friend, and kind of spew out what the day looked like to them, but we need the tools. We need the professional opinions of those who have gone through the training and years of education so that we are making a change and that we're seeing our life differently, um and hopefully being able to enjoy it a little bit
Yeah.
more or in a different fashion if that's something that we haven't been experiencing versus kind of feeling like we're jumping on the bandwagon and all of us moms are getting on the phone and going, oh, this is crazy, and then going to bed that night and
Yes.
doing it all over the next day
Totally. Yes. Very much.
without any tools. So I
Yeah.
really want you guys to really listen to Kendra on this episode and to follow up and know that you deserve professional care. You deserve the support. You deserve to be able to feel safe to say what's happening in your mind and in your body, knowing that it's not going to be met with judgment or maybe a defensiveness from, an
Yeah.
elder who has, well, we've
Right.
experienced that
Yeah.
too, and we will too.
Happens all the time, right? Yes.
Exactly. So and Kendra and all of the other therapists that have gone through this specialized training and provide the specialized care, it's unique and it's different and it's needed and you deserve it. So I wanted to make sure and mention that because I think sometimes often as moms we get caught up in what everybody else needs and we forget that we are deserving. All right, you guys, we're just going to take a brief break so that I can tell you all about one of How To Mom's favorite go-to brands and products. Earth Mama Organics formulates and creates organic and natural herbal pregnancy, postpartum, breastfeeding, and baby care products. We believe that they are one of the best and the safest personal care products on the market for both you and for baby. You can follow the link in our bio, or you can go to howtomom.com/links, follow the Earth Mama Organics link, and enter How To Mom for your promotional code to receive 15% off. All right, now back to today's show.
Yes, good point.
As well.
Can't be said loud enough or often enough. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So, you guys, we are going to talk about some common myths of motherhood that I think we all can relate to, but that Kendra has heard often enough from patients that come into her office and talk about what the struggles are of motherhood. Number one, which is so huge, especially in the line of work that we do as doulas, is that all of this should come natural. Why is being a mother not naturally adjusting? Like, and I remember this so true, because I think what really psyched me out is I was somebody who always wanted to be a mom. Like, it was never a question. I was like, I'm made to be a mom. I nannied. That was what I saw in my future. And so to all of a sudden become a mom and go, why isn't this feeling natural? Why am I struggling so much with feeling like this should be comfortable? And of course, we hear it in terms of birth and breastfeeding and all of that in my profession. But I would love to hear what you hear from moms and kind of the tools that you give them when they say, Kendra, this is not feeling natural. And like, is that a reflection of me?
Yes. Yeah, that's almost always the conclusion, right? Like that I hear in the therapy room would be like, the only reason I'm feeling the way I'm feeling is because something's wrong with me, or I'm missing some sort of gene, I'm missing some nurturing component, or like ease that this should be coming to me.
Right.
And sometimes it's just, in terms of like tools, sometimes it's building understanding to start to separate that part. Like, no, this isn't hard because of you. Like, you're personalizing that too much,
Mm-hmm.
right? That when we really look at this is a new job to you, would you expect the same of yourself going to a job, right? A different kind of job, right?
And new.
In your career or something, right? Yeah, it's new to you. Would you expect the same things of yourself? But there are a ton more expectations and pressure. And we can validate why, right? Parenthood or motherhood in particular, and there's can feel like there's so much at stake, right? We want to do a great job. Um, we want to do the best thing for a kid, the right thing for a kid. And we think about those expectations that I think influence kind of this, yeah, I should just know how to do this stuff, whether it is breastfeeding right, or it's figuring out what the right decision is for my child or my family. And that pressure can be immense.
Yeah.
And for some moms, what it means is you freeze. Like, you feel so much
Yeah.
pressure about which way do I turn, where do I go for advice or guidance, that you're no longer listening to your own like inner voice about it,
Mm-hmm.
which can pose its own challenges as you only look outward.
Right.
Like, you're not going to build your confidence, right?
Right.
So yeah, sometimes it's just back and say, okay, like, wait, give yourself a little grace here. You
Yeah.
are brand new to this. And even if it's your second, third, fourth, fifth kid,
Yeah.
it's a different person. This is a little person you haven't met before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost this level of perfectionism. And I think you
Yeah.
mentioned that too in your blog post that we'll link below. We are in a society, right, where like everything is online, and we are spending a lot of time scrolling, whether it's for educational purposes or just kind of mind numbing. But what we're seeing on our screen, we're almost connecting as if like that is true in real life
Yeah.
all day long. And to try and constantly strive for perfectionism, like, it can drive one mad.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's unachievable, right?
Yeah.
It's this trick that even if you think you reach a bar, right, wherever that perfectionism sets it for you, you'll get there and it will move.
Yeah.
It just does, right? That's the trick of perfectionism, that you can achieve it.
Yeah.
And you're expecting yourself to achieve that, right? With a totally different context and circumstances. You literally have more responsibilities. There is more to do. There is more to figure out. This adjustment, right, to the mental emotional load of parenthood and motherhood that doesn't often get talked about before you become a parent.
Right.
That's very real.
Right.
Like, you can't juggle all the balls in the air at the same time all the time.
Absolutely. And I love with the work that you do with your patients, it's not about eliminating necessarily the outside factors because those are always going to be there, but rather building the confidence within that individual person, which I think, is just not we're not doing that work enough. And to be able to have somebody walk with you and continue to give you the tools to build that confidence, I just don't know how else you would be able to look past kind of this, fake life
Yeah.
if you're not
Right.
truly
Right.
working on yourself. So I think I
Mhm.
want all of our listeners to hear that this work is specialize and individualize. And it's about each individual person and their circumstances and their family dynamics.
Right.
Um, and
Yeah.
you can't compare apples to oranges. I
Mhm.
think another thing too, when I read your blog post, what kind of popped into my head is, when I'm going to a family's home, whether it be for a postpartum visit or a lactation visit, we really hone in on the fact that this is if we're talking about lactation and breastfeeding, this is a learned journey, not only for mom, but also for baby. And so I do this with my
Right.
friends sometimes when I feel like they're being really hard on themselves. I'm like, don't talk to my friend like that. Like,
Yeah.
and they're talking about themselves. And it's like, if we're beating ourselves up as moms who are trying to learn how to breastfeed and like, why isn't it this working? And why don't I just know how to do this? Would we ever look at our baby and be like, why don't you just know how to eat?
Right. Yeah. That's a good reflection. Yes. Right.
It's like we have
Yep.
to give ourselves grace as well and realize that just because breastfeeding is talked about or known as a natural process or like
Mhm.
motherhood, being maternal,
Yeah.
that
Right.
doesn't mean it just comes to you naturally. It's still a learned process.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Yes. Again, such a good point, and I'm gonna use that now with my
Yeah. Yeah.
session. Like, you wouldn't, yeah, you would not talk to a friend or, yes, of course, your own baby, right, in the same way. Those expectations would be totally different.
Yeah.
The grace given for making mistakes or it not coming easily or fast. We do that much more easily for others than ourselves.
Yeah. And yeah, this comes with a lot of therapy as well on my half,
Yeah.
just, being home with twins and comparing myself and
Oh,
my life to somebody who has one child or multiple
right.
children, but not twins. It's like
Mm.
my husband was really good to it, always reminding me of like, we're in a whole different journey than anyone else.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yes. Well, and I like what you said a minute ago too, just about like, and I really try my best to do that with, all the clients I would see, that, okay, what are your circumstances? What's your context? What are your values? Like, we talk a lot about values in therapy too, right? And developing those as a mom, as a parent for your family, and allowing, like, there is no one right way to do this.
Yes.
You can mother in whatever way you want. You can narrate this experience in whatever way you want.
Love
Because,
that.
yeah, that outside influence, right, from social media, especially now, or other people or our families, is like, no, there's kind of this one way this looks. And
Yeah.
if you don't fit it, you're going to get judged. And that judgment does really happen. It's not just worry, it does happen
Happens.
externally around us.
And I bet even with those patients that you see that even have pretty strong boundaries or maybe say that it
Yeah.
doesn't affect them, like
Right. Right.
family guilt and all of that runs
Yes.
runs so deep.
Hmm.
And I think that kind of brings us into the next myth is that I should be able to do this all by myself. Um, could you talk a little bit about, what are patients saying? And is it sometimes I can assume it's not just that flat out, I'm supposed to do this all by myself, but more so they're saying it in other ways that
Yeah.
ultimately means that.
Yes. No, exactly the latter of what you just said, that I think they sometimes I'll see, right, clients aren't realizing their expectations or how they're talking about themselves are implying like you should always be the lead on this, you should always know the most, you should always be doing the most of the work. Like that they're realizing like what is this implying to yourself that
Yeah.
you should do it all alone. And that's even with some clients I see that have really robust support systems, great support systems in place
Yeah.
that aren't actually utilizing that.
Hmm.
Right? They don't call that family member or friend or nanny or babysitter or what they don't allow themselves to do it. They don't give themselves permission to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
you know,
maybe,
that
like you said, paralyzed.
yes. Or yes, yeah, yeah, that's a good point too,
Need help
right?
from you of like how to actually implement that and just
Mhm.
having somebody encourage.
Yes. Well, and the other place I'll see it too that I think we don't often think about is between couples. So, and I think, right, my husband and I experience this too, like with our first that, and I think this is, I think a lot of it comes from, right, we're kind of sold this idea, especially in our country and in our culture, that like if you're partnered, I'm talking very specifically, right, like if you're partnered, like, yeah, you two got this, you got all the bases covered, you'll be fine. And we even found, and I see this in my clients too, who are coupled, like drowning at times, still needing support and help, even though there were two of us, but kind of this attachment to this idea of like, it's the individualism in our culture. And I think in this country, right? Like you're do it yourself, you pull your own bootstraps up, like you decided to have a kid or you didn't, and it has still happened, right? But like this is on you to figure out
Yeah.
that I think does seep in a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, that we kind of think like, no, we both have it covered. We don't need to ask for help.
Right.
Um, like again, not allowing this permission of just like, if you have support, like why are we not using it?
Yeah. And why is there, for some, I'm sure, like, why is there shame attached to
Yeah,
asking for help?
right.
Where did that come
Exactly.
from? I'm sure there's like, a, a core reason why we're attaching that anyways. And so being able to have somebody to talk through to figure out like, where is this even coming from? And why
Yeah.
is this playing such a heavy role? And so I guess that leads me to another great question in terms of like if you've been meeting with a mom, and I'm sure there's a lot of help in being able to communicate with their partner about what their needs are or where they're struggling. If we find that there is a need maybe for partner to also start therapy or to maybe do some couple therapy, kind of what's the approach there and what's kind of offered or referrals that you might make for that.
Sure. Yeah, good question. So sometimes, and interestingly, at least in recent history, I haven't had a lot of people take me up on this, and there could be lots of reasons maybe why that is,
Mhm.
right? But I'll offer, hey, do you want your partner to come in? We could chat a little bit about this is often with new parents, right?
Yeah.
Some of the things you're struggling with, maybe what we're working on in therapy, are there some things even together as a couple that we can establish that a lot of new parents struggle with? And like, hey, here are some strategies and tools. Sometimes I will hear, right, there's longer standing dynamics maybe between the twosome that probably existed pre-baby that
Right.
have been exacerbated by having a baby.
Yes.
And they probably do need longer term
Yeah.
couples counseling, right? And
Yeah.
I will refer to that and and
Awesome.
and just be honest, right? Hey, um, I will say when I think about our conversation we've had before in what you're seeing with this generation who are having children and this nice change, right? In like not only dad's more involved, them kind of leading some of these processes. I've seen a few even like, hey, my husband's already in therapy. That's great, right?
Yeah.
Like already doing his own work. So I've seen
Mhm.
that change a little bit, which is great.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that still is a sticking point
Yeah.
that partner, again, generalizing a little bit here, often dad might be struggling to acknowledge one, he may need his own individual support that could really help.
Right.
But that's like a little bit of a missing piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes too, though, what can probably be extremely beneficial is just kind of opening the door, right?
Yeah.
If somebody has a history of like no therapy at all, but then, they enter motherhood and for whatever reason, they are more open to the support during that journey, that might then open the door to additional support, which Oh my gosh, would just be a beautiful thing to see for so many families. The next myth that I think, and I love you write this as well in your blog. I dare to say that every mom has thought this, which I 100% agree with you. I've said it to myself. I'm a bad mom. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How to Mom. I'm just interrupting today's episode to make sure you are well aware of all that How to Mom offers. We, of course, are a community and a support group for all moms at all stages of life, but we also offer a large variety of services that I wanted to make sure you are well aware of. We offer birth doula services, both in person or online support. We have birth support groups with different birth packages to choose from. We also provide placenta encapsulation services, lactation services from our lactation counselors. We also offer postpartum services, birth planning assistance, belly casting. We have a registered dietitian, nutritionist. We also offer a variety of photography services from birth, newborn, and family packages. We truly have it all here at How to Mom. So please don't hesitate to reach out today to have a free consult and help us find the best way to support you in your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Now back to today's episode.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's so heartbreaking for me to even say that, to think that I've said that to myself, or that people that I love and care about, people
Yeah.
that I don't even know, any mom has said that. One thing that I feel like we have seen a lot on social media, which I think is a positive thing. If you're even questioning if you're a good mom, that means right there, like, you're a
Yeah.
great mom.
Yeah.
But I really love, and this is why I encourage all of our listeners to follow you, whether it be on Instagram or on TikTok. It's just the tools, like the free resource and the free tools. And I just saw this video before we hopped on today. You have a video up that basically counteracts those thoughts of, like, what are some positive affirmations that we can fill
Mhm.
instead of, you know,
Right.
those negative thoughts. And I
Mhm.
think that's so huge. And so I'm assuming you hear that a lot from a lot of clients.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes, just as you were talking about that in thinking about, I definitely have some clients, right, where this is like a very deep rooted, pervasive belief. They probably started actually pre kids with I'm a bad person, and then it
Yeah.
just morphs into I'm a bad mom when they become a mom. Um, I think more commonly where I see it, and I think probably collectively we can all struggle with, like, we perceive we've made some sort of mistake
Yeah.
or like oversight, or we neglected something with one of our kids, right? And then it comes the thought, I'm a bad mom because I did XYZ thing, right?
Yeah.
Which sometimes is a little easier to work with undoing that versus sometimes they're deeply rooted. We really have to go backwards to probably like maybe childhood stuff, right? And
Right.
like, why are you believing you're actually a bad person? And it's just
Right.
manifesting here in your parenthood journey.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's a super common one, right? I mean, I think, is it the expectation that somehow there's a way to be like, I'll just never have that thought? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I do think, right, it's this idea of like building some new pathways in our head for what is a different response I can give myself when that thought pops up, or something stressful has happened. I did forget something that my kid did at school today, or whatever, right? That is much more compassionate,
Yeah.
and balanced, kind of what we think about as like a balanced way to think about the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love too, in reading your blog post and the conversation we're having today, of just that reassurance of, like, you are not alone. If you have had that feeling, if you have said that to yourself, like, I don't know why it makes me feel better to know, like, this is not just me feeling this way or struggling with that instant, you know,
Mhm.
negative response. And I love, kind of, even if it is in a negative response, saying, like, I'm not a bad mom, I made a mistake.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I'm
perfect
not a bad
example.
mom, I
Right.
forgot that. I'm human.
Yes. Yeah.
just remembering, regardless of who we are, what profession or what we're doing in life, like we are human, and I try and tell my kids that a lot too about professions that we look up to, whether it be doctors or um firefighters, or yes, there's a level of expectation, right, as experts, but at the end of the day, they are human.
Human too. Yes. Yeah.
They are
I
human
like
too, and
that.
just some
I like that.
compassion.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons, right? We kind of build up what a good mom looks like, right? We
Mhm.
all have that, whether it's really concrete in our heads or not, but we have a version of what that is. And that's what we're trying to attain. Including, we could say, like, yeah, it's really natural and normal. And we want to do a good job by our kids. And we want to, be top performers in a way, if you will, in motherhood. But when we attach too strongly to those expectations, or we don't allow, like, again, we're a human doing a job that we don't have a blueprint to. There's lots
Right.
of different ways to do this job.
Right.
There are real legitimate hardships to this work
Yes. Yes.
for a long time in the journey and
Yeah.
experience, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're going to mess up.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it perfectly. And actually, sometimes maybe that's better for our kids. What are they learning, right, when they observe that or can see that? Or, and I mean this, right? There's a boundary around, like, us creating that adversity for them, but when they're going to face something that's hard and we can't control it or shouldn't step in to have them avoid it, they need those skills as
Yeah.
little people to be adults.
Yeah. Absolutely. And yeah, and not being perfect either, or making
Right.
mistakes. And I
Yeah.
think about that too, like, any of us who have kids who have had a bad day or a bad tantrum or a, negative response. Like, would I ever look at my child and say, like, you're a bad child because you're having a hard time right now?
Right. Right.
Like, why do we say that? Why do we say that to ourselves then?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the most interesting job, because you're exactly right. There's no blueprint, it's nothing's black and white. There's so many factors. And so just that in itself should be a reassurance that, like,
Mhm.
we're just
Yeah.
all doing our best.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And then the last myth that we were going to touch on, and I think this is huge, is that moms think that they should enjoy all parts of motherhood.
Yeah.
I'm a mom. I should enjoy every part, every dish, every bedtime, every playtime, all the paperwork, all the sports. I should enjoy it
Right.
all. And if
Yeah.
I'm not, something's wrong with me.
Yes. Yes. Or they equate, I think sometimes we equate, right? This somehow is a reflection of how much I love my children.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
like, that often isn't the conscious thought. Maybe not for all moms, right? But I think often I'll throw that out there, right, to somebody, say, do you think you're equating, like, it also has something to do with how much you love your kids?
Oh my
The
gosh.
answer is yes. Like, if I say I don't like XYZ, is there some sort of reflection
Right.
on not loving my kids as much? Or, again, kind of probably also ties into, like, bad mom
Yeah.
uh, thoughts too, that, again, like, this is a job. A lot of this is a job. When you set aside the joys of being a parent, let's look at the tasks that is included on there, that many of us would be like, not my most preferred task to do in a job, but we have to do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's still there. That's real.
Absolutely. And that's okay. And it's probably even okay to say that out loud, and maybe that is where, part of your village comes in too. I mean, I feel like what was just really great to hear you say is that consciously and subconsciously it's different, right? Because I don't think I've ever really thought about, gosh, maybe I just really don't like that. And now that I can acknowledge that and say it and maybe strategize around that, I think about, do I love
Right.
going and watching my kids play hockey? Absolutely. Is it my favorite thing to do on Saturday morning? It's not, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so sometimes luckily with my village and support, I am able to utilize and say, like, I'm going to sit this one out because I
Mhm.
need to, I need to refuel a
Yes.
little bit. And I, have a husband who that is probably one of his favorite things to do as a parent.
Mhm.
And so just having these real conversations and not allowing guilt to attach to statements.
Yeah. That guilt's a big one. Yeah.
Oh,
That comes up a lot. Yeah.
and I still see it, I talk to my mom a lot about it, just, coming from a Catholic family, and, the guilt kind of going from one generation to the next. And then even like witnessing myself and my cousins try and set new boundaries and break that
Yeah.
guilt pattern, even for somebody like my mom who is like very open and wants to see change and acknowledges, it is even hard for her sometimes to like see the actual steps in order to do that, and so it's just
Yeah.
it's amazing how deeply rooted so much is in our personalities.
Totally. Yes, and all the different things, right, that influence,
Yeah.
um, I don't know, the type of guilt, how much it is, right? Or even, like, right, you're talking about maybe religiously associated guilt
Yeah.
with that piece or these other places we've absorbed.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like feeling bad about ourselves is often what I'll hear in session, right? And we identify this as guilt and what you're feeling, or sometimes it's actually shame. And those are two different things, right? And we talk about what is the difference between guilt
Oh,
and shame. A lot of times it's more, very generally, right? Like shame's a little more deeply rooted about who you are as a person versus like, I feel guilty that I yelled at my kid.
right.
Um, versus I'm a bad person, I yelled at my kid, right?
Right.
But that guilt is so, again, I don't know that we can eradicate it,
Right.
uh, but it comes up so often in motherhood.
Yeah.
In part because I think of the pressures, like the pressures that are unrealistic and unfair on
Yeah.
moms in particular, that make us much more prone to be like, oh, I haven't met this expectation. I feel this immense guilt or even shame.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I really encourage everyone listening today that, I'm already really proud of my generation and the generations coming after, of just the changes that I've already seen and witnessed through clients. But I just really strongly encourage you, if any part of this conversation kind of hit home for you, or if you've taken the steps to acknowledge that, if you're struggling, and if so, where you're struggling, that it is a complicated, multi-layered journey that we are on as moms, and it's not easy, and it deserves support, and it deserves care, and you deserve to have a professional help guide you through it. And really, at the end of the day, if you're better about prioritizing your kids' well-being over yourself, I will say, from somebody who has been in therapy, um, you are doing the work not only for yourself, but also for your kids when you meet with
Yeah.
somebody like Kendra.
Sure. Yes. Well said. Yeah. You can't pour from an empty cup.
It's so true.
You
And
know.
Kendra, can you let everybody know, because just like the work that I do as a doula, being a good fit is really important. And I know that that is true too with therapy. And so, will you let everybody know, when they go to your website or they find you on social, if they are wanting to explore what therapy could look like
Yeah.
in their lives and in their motherhood journey, what that process looks like, and if there are, like strings attached or not strings attached with trying to figure out if you would be the right fit for them.
Yeah, yeah, no, good question. Yeah, so I try to make it as easy as possible. If you visit my website, or if you do find me on primarily Instagram, there's a link to a website to you can schedule a free phone consultation. I always offer that to
Awesome.
folks. It's 15, 20 minutes. We'll chat. You tell me a little bit about what's going on, what are you struggling with, right? I can share a little bit about my practice, kind of how I practice, right? Certainly answer any questions you have. But yeah, I'd always offer that to somebody, as a freebie, of course, to kind of see. Yeah, the idea is like, do you feel like we're a good fit? Certainly, right. If I hear you're dealing with something that's out of my realm of expertise, I would tell you that and give you referrals for other folks. I know they're doing great work. But yeah, certainly offering that. Without an issue, that we can at least touch base, and then figure out if you want to proceed forward and schedule a session and um, kind of get more involved in that way. But yeah, just heading to my website, pfmwellbeing.com, and then you can click the contact button and you can directly schedule your own phone consultation and like the times I've got available.
Awesome. I think that just makes, taking the first step a little less scary.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
So I can't thank you enough. We will have all of those links, all of the ways to connect with Kendra at the bottom in our show notes, so that you can just easily get to contacting her and setting that up if you are interested. Thank you to all of our listeners for listening today. And we would love to hear any feedback that you might have. And I believe that it would set us up for a great future interview with Kendra to kind of dive a little bit deeper, maybe into one of these subjects or another question that maybe our listeners have. So, Kendra, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise and all of your fruitful content with us.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. It was a great conversation.
I agree. Well, I hope all of you listeners have a wonderful day, and we will catch you on the next episode. All right, you guys, that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. If so, please subscribe to our podcast, comment, share, give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen, and we will see you next time.